How about those interest rates?
They have come up. They are volatile. They're not as low as they were earlier in the year, but there is still affordability in the market.
You got to tune into this episode of the Monthly Market Update and find out more. Welcome back to the April Housing Market Update here in Southwest Florida. I'm here with
Cheryl Stokes, New American Funding.
And Mary Bartos, the Bartos Group of Premier Plus. So Cheryl, let's just jump into it because, one of the things we're hearing a lot about is volatility of rates.
Yes.
And that goes to affordability.
It does.
So tell everybody what Mark Fleming is saying.
Well, Mark is saying, and we are saying at New American Funding as well, geopolitical developments can certainly create short-term volatility. Energy price spikes can briefly push yields and mortgage rates higher as investors hedge against the risk of near-term inflation.
I think that says it all because we, in the war that we're in right now, it is really affecting our energy.
Right. Energy prices go up, inflation goes up, mortgage rates go up.
Yeah, exactly. So, as we move forward through that, I think this slide I have is a little bit old because it is from March 26th, and here we are recording on April 21st. So talk a little bit about these short-term volatilities.
Well, you can see it there. They have it circled. So that is the jump since all of this began.
Yeah.
We're up over 0.5%. Now, are we still lower than we have been? Yes, but we're not as low as we were earlier in the year. So that volatility does make a difference.
Sure. And it kind of scares people a little bit as,
it does.
From that perspective. So what does Investopedia saying?
Well, they say mortgage rates don't move in isolation when global events inject uncertainty into financial markets. As long as uncertainty remains elevated, rate swings may continue. And when we talk about volatility, rates can move several times in one day based on what's going on.
Yeah. Wah, wah, wah. I feel like I'm not a happy day. Sorry about this, guys. But, I was just talking about this, Cheryl.
Okay.
So let's talk. I mean, you and I were talking a long time. 7% was the average over 30 years for interest rates.
Yes.
We bought, we walked both ways uphill in the snow to school, but we bought homes in the 10s and 15, 13%. So let's talk about this chart.
Yeah, so a fixed rate mortgage in January of 2025, just a little over a year ago, was 7.26%. In April 6th, it was 6.45%. And then it shows you what 5.99 would look like. We were at 5.99 for about 5 minutes.
Does not count.
Does not count.
Yeah.
But the mid sixes are still there.
Right.
Always it's dependent individually when you see these rates advertised. Don't believe that is your rate because rates are individualized based on you, your history, the house, the state, your debt to income, your depth of credit. It's an average.
Right.
And we're still mid to high sixes.
So that's not bad. And, I recorded a video today about renting versus buying. And I'll be anxious to get your, opinion on that. And really, Mary, so make sure you tune into that.
Yep.
But, this is really, it's not a bad time, really, honestly, to buy.
It's not. It's still a good time to buy. It's still more affordable than it was last year and the year before. So if you were hanging around on the fence waiting for that opportunity, now is still a good opportunity.
The time is now. So what does Matthew Graham from Mortgage News Daily saying?
Even if the war were to end today, there's been sufficient disruption to infrastructure and a big enough initial spike in energy prices to create what economists refer to as second-round effects. In simpler terms, this means that inflation expectations and interest rates will not immediately return to February's levels simply because the war is over. Inflation lingers, rates are going to linger. They come down a lot slower than they go up.
I feel like I'm doing the wah, wah, wah thing, but
sorry.
There is hope. Like,
hope.
There's ways to get that interest rate down.
There are ways
Concessions, buy downs.
Concessions. I mean, depending on which market you're in the United States, it's a buyer's market. I recommend to every single buyer they should ask for a seller concession to buy the rate down. And then you don't have to worry about refinancing later. You've bought the rate down to where you want it to be. You've done it with somebody else's money. All is good.
She does do this. I can
this.
vouch. I can vouch for her. So Intercontinental Exchange, what are they saying?
Every major market has seen purchase improvements improve year over year, with the largest reductions in markets where prices have pulled back most from the recent highs.
Yeah. So Cheryl, tell me what Mark Fleming's saying.
He's saying ultimately affordability is determined by the interplay between mortgage rates, home prices, household incomes, and how those forces evolve across local markets. And that's so true.
Right.
It's different for everybody. Affordability looks different for everybody.
In every market.
So
market. If you're coming from New Jersey or Connecticut or Michigan, it's going to look very different when you come here.
Yes.
So, I love this slide. The way they've got it is home prices aren't crashing, but growth is flattening.
Absolutely.
And we've seen that for quite some time. So what does 55places.com say?
Well, they say home price growth is slowing, but the impact of price hikes over the past several years continues to affect affordability. For many prospective buyers, overpriced homes can linger longer on the market, diminishing seller power. We talk about that
all the time. Which kind of leads us into what's happening in our market. So, if we look at March homes for sale, Cheryl, and the biggest number of homes for sale is the blue line, or the bar, which is Naples. And you look at how many we're off by 1,300 homes. So less homes for sale. That's good for price. We were in a very strong buyer's market, and we're almost coming back to a neutral market, which in my world is great. Marco's pretty flat. You're down by 1,000 in Fort Myers from last year, and you're down by 1,100 in Cape, which is kind of crazy, right? Now, total sales, when you look at, those were homes for sale. Now we're looking at actual total sales. They were kind of flat in most markets except for Naples when they went from 832 last year up to 1,057 this year. Significant.
That's a lot.
It's a big jump. The other markets are pretty flat, which, not so bad. You'd expect that in Fort Myers and Cape Coral because it's primarily a lot of people live there full time. So it's not a second home market.
Right.
And Marco is just too small. I mean, it is up from 80 to 103, but there's only 18,000 properties on the island.
Right.
So much smaller piece to look at. March pendings. Wow. Everything in March was up, pendings, sales, houses to pick from, but not as many as before. So I love that, because it gives people some time to think, but they're not overwhelmed.
And it's leveling off.
Which everybody loves that. Now, days on market, I like to look at this because if you look at the largest days on market, and this is an average number, Cheryl, from Marco Island, it's gone up. It's 113 days on market in March this year versus last year. But we're still seeing the pendings. We're still seeing things. So if your house has been on the market for more than 113 days in Marco Island or 87 in the Cape, you need to start thinking about, I probably have a pricing issue or something else is going on.
Right.
As we get to these last couple slides, Cheryl, the showings to a pending, I love talking about this because when I sit and visit with and give them a market update for their home, my homeowners, I'm talking about, hey, here in Naples, it was 10.4 showings on an average in a house to get to a pending.
Right.
Marco was 12.1. So you can see if we've got more than those showings, I have a problem. If I have less and it goes pending, woohoo.
Right.
Hooray for different do for day, as they say. Showings per listing for that month. I always like to know what those are for my listings to say, okay, if we're getting more than, 2.8 in Fort Myers on your home, we're doing better than the average. Right? So to me, these numbers are really important. Look at them. You can, stop the presentation and kind of move forward with what your area is and look at if your home is listed, what that looks like.
Yeah, and that's also really good because if you're getting 3 per month and it takes 3 months is expected.
Yeah, at least, right? At least. And then last but not least, because Cheryl, this is something that people are looking at in affordability and things, is how much can I get off list price?
Yep.
These are averages. You can see 5% in Naples. You can see Marco is like, do the math real quick, 6.3%,
Yep.
right? The Fort Myers is about 4.4, and the Cape is really great. It's very close to list price. So, I always look at this, Cheryl, because when you're putting in an offer and say you're in an area and you look at what the average is for that area and you come in with a really lowball offer, you can offend the seller,
Right.
right? The seller may think you're real, but kind of say no way, no how, right?
Right.
Or you could just go out and try and bottom feed a whole bunch of them and find the one that makes sense. But at the end of the day, you know what those percentages are. Be a knowledgeable buyer. And as a seller, really understand. Talk with your agent, if it's not us, about, hey, how can I improve this property? Is it
Right.
price? Is there other things to get it sold?
And it's really all about proper expectations. So a buyer will come to me and say, well, I want to offer $100,000 off and I want seller concessions. Well, it's my job to, one, say, well, talk to your agent to see if this is reasonable, but to also say, this is not reasonable.
Right.
Set the proper expectations of where you fall, and if 3 to 5% is the average, which it is close to for
Right.
everybody, know that that's where you have the wiggle room, whether it's off the top or in a concession, but beyond that is a little out of the norm.
Exactly. So, I don't know, Cheryl, we always end this with, is it time to move? And we laugh every time because is it time to move?
It's always time to move.
Exactly.
There's always a reason to move. You're moving up, you're moving down, you're relocating, you're tired of where you're at, you want to change. It's always a good time to move.
And it's nothing to be afraid of right now. We're not, we're moving into a neutral market. If anything, Cheryl, I think this whole tax situation that we're going to get to vote on in November is going to help Florida and people wanting to move here.
I think it'll change the picture for sure.
Yeah. So I don't know about you, but until next time, I'm Mary Bartos with the Bartos Group of Premier Plus Realty.
I'm Cheryl Stokes with New American Funding.
And we look forward to seeing you here, the Market Update, next month.